Hello from Daily Moral Story. Welcome to today's inspiring tale. Rain hammered the sidewalk in front of Patterson Manufacturing that Monday morning. Derek Patterson stood across the street, holding a small umbrella, blending in with the crowd of hurried employees who were rushing inside. He wore simple jeans and a worn-out jacket, hoping no one would recognize him as the founder and CEO of the very company they worked for. He sensed a tingle of excitement and nerves, a swirl of anticipation about the day ahead. He had never done anything like this before. His plan was simple: go undercover to observe the real heartbeat of his company. He had heard rumors that morale was low, that some employees felt invisible, and that a few managers might be abusing their power. Derek believed in accountability and kindness, but he realized that living in a penthouse office had distanced him from the everyday reality of his people. So he slipped into a new role, a curious temp worker equipped with a fake ID badge and a believable backstory. His heart beat faster with each step toward the entrance. If he wanted to bring genuine change, he needed to see everything up close. This was his chance to uncover hidden truths. He inhaled deeply. He stepped inside the lobby, feeling a wave of nostalgia. He remembered the early days when it was just him and a few dedicated partners chasing a dream. Now, the front desk buzzed with phone calls, and employees bustled to and fro, carrying piles of paperwork or chatting about urgent deadlines. Derek approached the receptionist, a woman named Nora, with a careful smile. He explained he was starting his temporary assignment that day. Nora hardly glanced up. She tapped a few keys on her computer, handed him a visitor's sticker, and waved him toward a side elevator without much interest. He found the designated floor, an open space filled with humdrum cubicles. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, giving the room a harsh, almost clinical feel. Derek was directed to an empty desk at the far corner. Nearby, a middle-aged man in a too-tight button-up shirt drummed his fingers on the partition, looking bored. Derek smiled and introduced himself, but the man mumbled something inaudible and walked away. It was a less-than-warm welcome. Settling in, Derek noticed that people seemed preoccupied, almost wary. He wondered if the rumors of low morale were right there in front of him, waiting to be seen. A gentle voice interrupted his thoughts. "Hey, are you the new temp? I'm Lucy. I do data entry on this floor." Derek turned to see a young woman with kind eyes and a bright polka-dot scarf. She seemed genuinely curious and honestly offered a handshake. Derek nodded, returning the smile. Lucy pointed to the computer at his station and explained a few basic tasks. He was supposed to sort incoming digital forms, verify customer information, and flag anything unusual. As she spoke, Derek appreciated her patience. Lucy was the first person here who made him feel like he truly belonged. Moments later, a tall, imposing manager named Brian strode by. His voice boomed across the floor, commanding attention. "Lucy, have you finalized those monthly reports?" "And who's this?" He shot Derek a suspicious glance. Lucy started to explain, but Brian cut her off. "You know we have strict quotas to meet, right? Our performance reviews are around the corner, so don't waste time chit-chatting." Derek felt a pang of disappointment as Brian walked away. The tension in the air was almost palpable. He wondered if this harsh approach was part of why people here seemed so guarded. Lucy simply sighed. Derek's first real assignment came after Lucy guided him through training modules on his computer. His job? Sort a backlog of product orders mislabeled in the system. The task seemed straightforward but tedious. As he clicked through each file, he noticed certain names and addresses looked familiar. These were longtime customers, people he'd once visited personally to learn about their needs. Something inside him stirred. A mix of pride and concern. If this data was so disorganized, maybe the entire process had weakened. Determined to see it through, he dived into the work. He took a steady breath and pressed on. By lunchtime, he'd made decent progress. Lucy invited him to join a few co-workers at the cafeteria. The space was noisy, but it offered a brief respite from the tension out on the floor. Derek stood in line, balancing a tray of food that looked surprisingly good for a corporate cafeteria. He overheard snippets of conversation, people complaining about the latest policy changes, others whispering about Brian's constant pressure. Lucy noticed Derek's concerned expression and gave him a reassuring nod. "Don't worry," she said softly. "Not everyone is like Brian. There are good people here who care about each other." They sat together, and Lucy introduced Derek to Alan, a quiet man in IT, and Carmen, an energetic woman from marketing. Alan nodded politely, barely speaking, while Carmen launched into a funny story about a client call gone wrong. Derek laughed along, feeling a bit more at ease. He asked them how they felt about the company's direction. Carmen shrugged, praising the product quality but lamenting the bureaucracy. Alan mumbled something about outdated software systems. Lucy chimed in that employees often felt unheard when they brought issues to management. Derek listened, realizing these were real pain points. He nodded thoughtfully. Derek spent the afternoon quietly observing how team members interacted. A pattern emerged. They were friendly enough with one another but became guarded whenever a supervisor approached. He saw Brian chastise an employee for a minor mistake in front of everyone, making the poor man flush with embarrassment. Lucy later confided that the office was rife with tension because of unrealistic goals, and employees feared repercussions. Derek's heart sank. This wasn't the environment he had dreamed of fostering. Where was the culture of mutual respect and kindness? He realized that fear had replaced collaboration, and it weighed on his conscience. As Derek finished his shift, he noticed a disheveled employee slowly restocking the supply closet. Hoping to help, Derek offered to carry some heavy boxes. The employee named Marco barely acknowledged him. Derek tried again. "Hey, I can lend a hand if you want." Marco turned away, muttering something about handling it himself. Derek was puzzled and a bit stung. As CEO, he was used to people jumping at his offers of assistance. Undercover, he was just another stranger. Marco brushed past him without a word of thanks, leaving Derek standing there, unsure if he had done something wrong. Derek sighed. He headed home that evening with a heavy heart. Marco's reaction wasn't just rudeness. Derek suspected something deeper, maybe exhaustion or frustration. The next morning, Derek returned early, determined to learn more. He found Marco in the break room, staring at a cup of coffee. Approaching cautiously, Derek asked how he was doing. Marco shrugged, then finally spoke in a low voice. He was overwhelmed with financial troubles and felt management ignored workers' pleas for fair wages. It dawned on Derek that employees here might be under so much strain that simple kindness felt foreign or even suspicious. He felt empathy. Later that day, Brian assigned Derek to assist in shipping. The warehouse buzzed with forklifts, packing tape, and the hum of conveyor belts. Derek donned a reflective vest, blending in with workers busy loading crates. He saw men and women lifting boxes heavier than they should, some wincing from back pain. Safety protocols seemed haphazard, and the pace was relentless. Chatting with a few workers, Derek discovered they skipped breaks to meet impossible targets. No wonder morale was low. He thought back to the original vision for Patterson Manufacturing, a place where quality products and compassionate policies coexisted. He sighed. Day 3 Undercover brought fresh insights. Derek shadowed a customer service representative named Keisha, who spent hours on the phone fielding complaints. She was calm and empathetic, even when callers were irate. She worked in cramped conditions with outdated software. Derek wondered how many bright employees like Keisha were slipping through the cracks. That afternoon, he witnessed Lucy politely approach Brian about a scheduling conflict. Brian brushed her aside. "Figure it out," he snapped. Lucy blinked back tears, and Derek's chest tightened. Had his leadership failed to protect earnest workers like her? Derek fumed. He felt a righteous anger. That evening, after another long day, Derek slumped into his small rental car. He drove past the shining headquarters building, his building, but no one suspected he was the man at the top. He recalled the early years when he had personally hired those who shared his values of kindness and integrity. He had believed that treating employees like family would foster loyalty and growth. Yet something had gone awry. The bigger the company grew, the more distant his leadership team seemed to become. Now the workers felt overlooked, and the managers wielded power carelessly. Derek vowed to set things right. Soon. In the days that followed, Derek quietly gathered more information. He learned that many employees feared retribution if they spoke up. He saw overworked staff skipping vacations, some covering for sick colleagues without extra pay. He discovered Lucy stayed late most evenings, ensuring others could leave on time. Her small acts of kindness went unrecognized by upper management. Derek also noticed Marco rechecking inventory after hours to reduce mistakes. These people were committed, yet they felt invisible. One night, Derek joined Lucy and Marco at a local diner. Over plates of scrambled eggs and fries, they shared their struggles. He walked back to his modest motel room under the glow of streetlights, mind racing with all he'd seen. He realized this was more than a business problem, it was a matter of humanity. The pain in people's eyes haunted him. If workers felt undervalued, how could the company thrive? He paused by the flickering neon sign outside his room, remembering his own humble beginnings. A quiet voice inside asked, had he lost touch with his original dream? I often wonder how many of us trade empathy for efficiency without even noticing. Which would you choose, and why? Derek decided it was time to test leadership's response to concerns. The next morning, he anonymously emailed HR about unsafe warehouse conditions and unreasonable quotas. He also included suggestions for more flexible scheduling and better wages. Days passed without a reply. Meanwhile, Brian continued berating employees, and Nora at reception barely acknowledged anyone entering. Derek noted that employees who tried to raise issues were dismissed or told they were replaceable. It struck him how fear had systematically replaced trust. Determined to make a difference, Derek planned a final push. He would reveal himself and confront the broken system. He resolved. On Friday morning, Derek arrived dressed in a crisp suit for the first time in weeks. He walked through the lobby, ignoring the startled look from Nora. He went straight to the executive floor, where polished doors led to luxurious offices. Some managers recognized him immediately, faces going pale. He requested an emergency meeting in the largest conference room, instructing them to bring in representatives from every department. Whispers spread like wildfire. Derek Patterson was here, unannounced. Brian rushed in, confusion twisting his features. Lucy, Marco, and others gathered, unsure why they were summoned. Derek took a steady breath, heart pounding. He began with a calm but firm tone. Thank you all for coming. Some of you know me as Derek Patterson. Others might not recognize me because I've spent the last few weeks undercover in our own company. A murmur swept the room. Lucy's eyes widened and Marco stood stock still. Brian frowned, arms folded. Derek continued explaining his experiences on the warehouse floor, in customer service, and among the cubicles. He spoke of the fear, the frustration, and the quiet acts of kindness he witnessed. Then he leveled his gaze at the management team. We have lost our way. Derek then invited employees to speak freely. At first, no one moved. Then Lucy cleared her throat, describing the pressure to meet quotas without additional resources. Marco spoke up about wages and the dismissive attitudes he'd encountered. Keisha pointed out the archaic software that made her job harder. One by one, employees found their voices. Some cried, others stammered, but the message was clear. They longed for a workplace where kindness and empathy weren't overshadowed by fear. Brian tried to protest, blaming market conditions, but Derek shook his head. He saw the truth in each trembling testimony. It was undeniable. Derek took a moment to steady his voice. I started this company with the belief that every individual matters, he said, glancing around. I see now we've allowed bureaucracy and fear to take root. That ends today. He announced immediate policy changes, raising wages to a fair standard, revisiting safety protocols, and committing funds for modern software. He also vowed to establish an anonymous feedback system and hold monthly town halls. The room erupted in stunned whispers. Lucy blinked, tears of relief gathering at the corners of her eyes. Brian looked pale, but Derek was resolute. We rebuild together. Applause broke out from some corners. Others remained silent, still processing the shock. Derek didn't expect overnight miracles, but he wanted everyone to know their voices mattered. He invited suggestions, urging people not to hold back. Slowly, employees began to propose ideas. Flexible schedules for parents, a transparent promotion process, better training programs. Lucy mustered courage to ask for official recognition of employees who went above and beyond. Derek immediately agreed, promising to highlight acts of kindness during monthly meetings. As the meeting wound down, an uneasy hope filled the air. Something real was changing, and it felt powerful. Brian stood uncomfortably near the doorway, arms crossed as employees filed out. Derek approached him directly. "We need leaders who uplift, not intimidate," Derek said quietly. Brian began a litany of excuses, but Derek held up a hand. He stated that every manager would undergo leadership retraining, emphasizing empathy and accountability. Brian swallowed hard, nodding stiffly. Derek saw fear in his eyes, and for a moment he felt a pang of compassion. Maybe Brian, too, was caught in a system that prioritized results over humanity. But that didn't excuse the damage done. Change had to begin at the top. In the weeks that followed, Derek doubled down on his promises. Wages were adjusted and safety regulations were enforced. Supervisors received empathy training, and an open-door policy became mandatory. Lucy was appointed to a task force charged with improving communication, while Marco offered insights about fair compensation. Keisha led a tech committee to modernize software. Each small change signaled a bigger shift in culture. Derek personally walked the floors, greeting employees by name. He listened to their concerns and praised their achievements. Word spread that Patterson Manufacturing was becoming a place where kindness was not only recognized but celebrated. One afternoon, Derek spotted Marco restocking the same supply closet where he once refused help. This time, Derek offered assistance again. Marco hesitated, then handed him a box. They worked side by side, placing items neatly. Afterward, Marco thanked Derek, explaining he'd been too embarrassed before, weighed down by bills and stress. Derek nodded, understanding. "I appreciate your hard work," he said simply. Marco managed a small grin. It was a quiet moment, but it symbolized the slowly mending trust between management and staff. Derek knew change wouldn't happen overnight, but every gesture of kindness brought them closer. They exhaled. Shortly afterward, Lucy proposed a monthly Above and Beyond award. Derek loved the idea. At the first presentation, Lucy was recognized for her selflessness in staying late to help others. Marco received a commendation for reducing inventory errors. Keisha was celebrated for her tireless patience with customers and for modernizing systems. Surprised and grateful, they each gave small acceptance speeches. Derek saw tears in the crowd, not from sadness, but from relief that kindness was finally valued. He reminded everyone that empathy and efficiency need not be opposites. By valuing people, the company would rise together. Applause thundered around them. 3 months later, the shift in atmosphere was undeniable. Productivity actually improved, and turnover rates decreased. Employees felt secure enough to voice concerns, resulting in faster problem-solving. The warehouse installed better ergonomic equipment, and injuries dropped noticeably. Customer satisfaction rose as well, with fewer complaints about shipping delays or order mishaps. Derek made a point to spend time on different floors each week, never wanting to become a distant figure again. Lucy's positivity bloomed, Marco found new confidence, and Brian, after retraining, began consulting his team instead of criticizing them. Kindness was not just recognized, it fueled the company's success. Morale soared. As the months went by, Derek reflected often on how close he'd come to never seeing these truths. If he hadn't gone undercover, the toxic culture might have festered indefinitely. Whenever he heard someone praise the new environment, he reminded them it was the employees' courage that drove the transformation. Lucy's initiative, Marco's honesty, and countless other voices had guided the company back to its founding principles. Derek felt a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that kindness recognized wasn't just a slogan, it was a call to action. True empathy created a positive shift that no policy could enforce. One late afternoon, Derek stood by a large window overlooking the bustling factory floor. He watched Lucy help a newcomer find their way, saw Brian calmly discussing improvements with his team, and noticed Marco sharing a joke with fellow workers. A soft pride welled up inside him. He recalled the humbling moment when Marco ignored his help, a moment that had sparked deeper insight. Kindness is recognized. Empathy creates positive change. It was now a mantra, the lifeblood of Patterson Manufacturing. With gratitude and resolve, he stepped away from the window and headed toward tomorrow. Looking back on this journey, we see that even a well-meaning founder can lose sight of the human heartbeat that makes an enterprise thrive. The Undercover experience was Derek's wake-up call, revealing pain points that formal reports and neat spreadsheets never could. When empathy is placed at the core of decisions, employees feel seen and valued. That recognition propels them to perform at their best. Your beer story reminds us that success isn't just about profit margins or industry accolades. It's about people. And when kindness is recognized, it becomes the spark that ignites a culture of genuine respect and lasting impact. So as you contemplate your own workplace or personal life, remember that empathy can bridge gaps no policy alone can fix. Derek's Undercover endeavor teaches us the power of stepping into someone else's world, truly listening to their struggles, and offering solutions that honor both humanity and productivity. Kindness will always be noticed in ways we may not immediately realize. If you have a story of witnessing compassion in action, share it below. Let's encourage others to lead with understanding and integrity. By doing so, we collectively build environments where everyone can flourish and carry that light forward. Comment below. We hope this story, whether real or fictional, inspires you in some way. Stories spark hope. That's why we share them. May it remind you to lead with kindness, stand up for what's right, and believe in the power of change. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.